A beautiful painting was inherited by the guest over 30 years ago. It was identified as a work by Joseph Henry Sharp, a renowned American painter and member of the Taos Society of Artists. The appraiser shared background details about Sharp's career. Sharp was well known, and his paintings were purchased by institutions such as the Smithsonian. His work even gained the attention of President Theodore Roosevelt. The painting in question likely depicted a scene in Taos. It was described as an oil-on canvas with an impasto texture, featuring thick, visible brushstrokes. The piece was noted for its impressive use of light and shadow and remained in superb condition. It had no tears, holes, cracking, or paint loss, and was likely still in its original form. Because this piece was fresh to the market and well preserved, its estimated value was.
This painting, if it were in a gallery, I would expect it to sell in the range of $400,000.
$400,000.
Yes.
It's a lot.
Yes. It's a very exciting painting.
Wow.
The piece in question was a print that the guest had received as a gift from his parents. The title of the piece was The Melody Haunts My Reverie. The print was created by Roy Lichtenstein, an American pop artist. It was signed by Lichtenstein in pencil, with Roman numerals next to it, indicating it was one of a limited edition. The appraiser explained that this print was part of a pop art portfolio released in 1965, which included artists such as Andy Warhol. The appraiser also discussed the Ben-Day dot technique that Lichtenstein used.
He was working in the 40s and 50s in a more abstract style, a style that was more common in America in that time. And it wasn't until the early 60s, when he'd come back to New York, that he developed into this comic book style using this dot pattern, which is known as a Ben-Day dot.
In this method, ink was applied in layers to create the distinct dot pattern. Underscoring its significance, the estimated replacement value was.
I would suggest that you have a replacement value on this of $300,000.
It's definitely going to remain in the family.
Great.
These books were owned by our great-grandmother. As far as going back beyond that, we're not sure how long they've been in the family.
What was immediately apparent, however, was that these were not just any old books. They were something truly extraordinary. They are a two-part set of botanical illustrations titled Hortus Eistatenis, meaning the Garden of Eichstätt in Latin. In the early 17th century, the Bishop of Eichstätt had conceived the idea of creating a comprehensive garden that included flowering plants from all over the known world. To document this marvel, he hired Basilius Bessler, a pharmacist from Nuremberg, who in turn assembled a team of engravers to produce lavish, large-format plates depicting the plants in their various stages of bloom. Unlike earlier botanical works, which were primarily scientific, Bessler's volumes were groundbreaking for their purely aesthetic approach. The task was monumental. 16 years of labor went into producing over 1,000 illustrations of 600 species, spread across 367 plates. Completed in 1613, the books were a product of the same world that gave rise to Galileo and Shakespeare, and they dramatically changed the field of botanical illustration. Only about 300 uncolored copies were originally made, with even fewer surviving in complete form today, most having ended up in museums and libraries. Despite a few minor tears, the guest copies were remarkably intact, untrimmed, with little spotting, and retaining their original character. Individual pages from damaged sets often fetch.
Can sell for anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 on an individual basis.
But complete, undisturbed volumes like these are exceptionally rare. Given their condition and historical importance, the appraiser valued the set at between
of $250,000 to $350,000.
The guest, stunned and overjoyed, thanked him, still trying to grasp the magnitude of what they had brought in. This intriguing piece of art belonged to the guest's uncle. It was created by William Mason Brown, a renowned artist from New York. The appraiser admired the exceptional painting and shared details about the artist.
He was born in upstate New York in 1828, and stylistically he's aligned with the Hudson River School and also with a group called the American Pre-Raphaelites. What they were interested in is the beautifully detailed depiction of nature.
The painting exuded fine details, such as the cows, trees, water. The empty cottage and open windows suggested a sense of innocence fading during wartime. The painting was noted to be in excellent original condition and could be cleaned to enhance its brightness by 30 to 50%. The appraiser estimated the value of the painting at auction to be.
And for auction, I would estimate it between $30,000 and $50,000.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Wow.
The guest shared an intriguing story about a family collection of presidential autographs and letters. The appraiser revealed that the featured item was an autographed letter signed by Abraham Lincoln, dated June 1860. This date was just after Lincoln won the Republican nomination for president in May 1860 in Chicago. The letter was addressed to William Jones, who had been Lincoln's first employer. The appraiser explained that William Jones played a significant role in Lincoln's early life.
It turns out that Mr. Jones was a man of modest means, but he had a fairly interesting library of books on American history. And according to Mr. Jones, Lincoln, as a teenager, read all of these books and learned about American history from Mr. Jones.
The letter was considered a deeply personal piece of history and extremely rare. Given its historical significance, the letter was appraised with an auction value of.
We have an auction estimate today of probably conservatively $30,000 to $50,000.
Oh,
so
my
a little bit
goodness.
more than a couple of hundred.
I cannot believe it.
The guest explained that the sword was inherited by her deceased husband from his great-uncle. The sword was probably made in Birmingham, England, by the well-known company Woolley, Dutton, Deacon and Johnson. The sword, which had a profusely engraved gilt and blued blade, was highly detailed with the cipher of King George III. One side of the blade also bore an inscription. The appraiser identified the gilt brass mounts as being engraved with Taylor's coat of arms. The sword was not just a weapon, but also a presentation piece, given in 1805 to honor leadership and discipline. Given its condition and desirability, the auction value suggested was.
I think at auction, conservatively, this would bring somewhere around $20,000 to $30,000.
Gee.
Is that a good place to start?
That's a good place to start.
The guest displayed a painting that had been passed down from his grandfather. The exquisite piece was created by Paul de Lampre, a French-American painter. De Lampre's works were celebrated for their realism, delicate brushwork, and sensitivity to color and light. The painting was found to be signed and dated 1899 and labeled Los Angeles. Known for his floral compositions, de Lampre painted this piece as a portrait of irises. The painting was described as being on canvas laid down on board, which appeared dirty but was otherwise in its original condition. The frame was a metal gilt frame, originally golden but now oxidized. Given market trends, the auction value estimated for the piece was.
I would have thought this would be, if you put it up at auction, for $30,000 to $40,000.
Whoa!
So, how about that? I think your wife is going to be pleased.
That's an understatement.
This particular painting, likely purchased in 1913, was inherited by the guest from her husband's family. It was created by Edward Redfield, a Pennsylvania artist. The appraiser confirmed Redfield's importance as one of the founders of the Pennsylvania Impressionists, along with William Lathrop.
And Redfield studied in Philadelphia at the Pennsylvania Academy and latterly taught there, as did many of the other Pennsylvania Impressionists. But this is from the early part of his career.
The painting is an oil on canvas and is dated 1892. This was a significant period in Redfield's life, coinciding with his first solo exhibition in the United States. It's a fine example of his early work, which differs from his later pieces. His Pennsylvania-based paintings, characterized by heavy impasto and a bright palette, are highly sought after. Despite this being an early French period piece, the appraiser estimated its fair auction value to be.
Well, at auction at the moment, I feel that a fair estimate would probably be in the $25,000 to $40,000 for a piece like this.
The guest inherited an exquisite piece of art from his mother. It was created by an artist named Theodore Grust, who, while lesser known, was an accomplished painter.
He was the head painter at the Meissen Porcelain Works around the turn of the 20th century. He was born in Meissen, had trained to be both a porcelain painter and a painter in oil.
The appraiser pointed out the signature, which read Theo Grust, Munich. The painting appears to date from the late 1880s or early 1890s, despite the incorrect 1802 date on the canvas, as the artist was not alive then. The artwork depicted two girls in an interior setting. It was masterfully executed, reflecting the artist's best technique from his Munich period. Despite some historical damage, the overall condition remained very good. Given its charm, the estimated auction value was.
I would think a picture of this size with two figures and this kind of charm. Several of us conferred. Our feeling is it would sell for about $30,000 at auction.
Really?
Isn't that nice?
That's nice.
It
Very
is.
nice.
The guest's husband had purchased a table a few months ago at a downsizing sale. The table was signed by Philip and Kelvin Laverne. Philip and Kelvin Laverne were known for creating high-end furniture using metals, and their pieces were sold to an international clientele. The appraiser pointed out that these tables were made in small quantities, and it was rare to find one with the label still attached.
He considered it not just furniture, but functional art. They used an acid etch process to make this design. And this is typical in the sense that it has this wonderful bronze and this pewter. See this color here? That is pewter.
The table's patinated enamel had faded somewhat, but the patina was originally achieved by burying the piece to interact with the soil. The design of the table was praised for its size and decoration. This particular table was considered one of their most successful designs. It would have been quite expensive when originally made, around the late 1960s or early 1970s. The auction value decided for the piece was...
This table, we placed an estimate at auction of $15,000 to $20,000.
Oh, no.
Yes.
What seemed like a simple rummage sale find turned out to be an extraordinary piece of American folk sculpture.
Bought it in the Fond du Lac area. I think it came from Waupun, which there are a lot of Dutch people in Waupun. And basically, that's all I know about it.
At the time, it was just a charming antique, acquired for a mere $35. Upon closer examination, the piece is identified as a handcrafted child's sled. Made of pine, it was not mass-produced, but rather created by an unknown artisan with remarkable craftsmanship. The design included metal reinforcements in the wings, and a screw in the head, likely painted over at one point, meant to ensure durability as a child held on during use. Even the handlebar, which was probably salvaged from a Victorian doll carriage, added to the piece's character. What made the sled even more fascinating was the discovery that it was not entirely unique.
But about 20 years ago, another sled, same form, surfaced.
Oh.
And it's approximately twice the size of this one.
This suggested that both sleds could have been made by the same craftsman, one for an older child and this smaller version for a younger sibling. Considering its rarity, craftsmanship, and artistic appeal, the estimated auction value is...
I would value it at somewhere around $20,000 to $30,000.
The guest is outrightly overwhelmed with shock and emotion.
My gosh. I could just cry. I had no idea.
It's a wonderful...
Wow.
A charming bracelet was showcased that the guest acquired at a Connecticut jewelry store. It was identified as a retro piece dating from the 1940s to 1950s, a post-war era characterized by bold and dramatic jewelry design. Made of 18-karat gold, the bracelet featured a stylized fluted central design. The centerpiece contained diamonds and a mix of multicolored gemstones, including citrines, emeralds, rubies, and sapphires.
The other thing that's nice about this particular piece is that when you flip up the center part, not only is it a brooch, it's also a watch. The other thing that's particularly nice about this, when you look at the inside, pieces by Cartier.
The bracelet itself was in the tubergus style, inspired by gas tubing, which gave it flexibility and a distinctive look. The watch and case were both by Cartier, which significantly increased its value. Although the appraiser could not confirm the exact Cartier designer, the piece was considered one of a kind. Due to the resurgence of interest in 1940s Cartier jewelry, the auction value of the bracelet was...
At auction, I would expect that this item would bring somewhere between $20,000 to $25,000.
Fabulous. Yippee-ki!
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah, I like that.
It's a very exciting piece.
This item belonged to the guest's husband, a passionate history enthusiast. It was a historical document signed by Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States. The document was a draft of Roosevelt's resignation letter from his time as President of the Police Commission. The letter revealed Roosevelt's meticulous editing style and perfectionism. The appraiser pointed out various handwritten insertions that offered deeper insight into his thought process.
He says here, experience has been working with all, and then he adds in the rich and the poor to show his democratic nature.
The document was clearly hand-edited and signed by Roosevelt, adding to its uniqueness and historical value. The letter, highlighting a key moment in Roosevelt's political career, was considered highly sought after. The estimated auction value was...
Well, in auction values, I would say that it is in the neighborhood of $25,000 as an auction estimate.
The guest explained that the piece had come from her mother, who had discovered it impulsively at a little antique shop in downtown Anaheim about 20 years earlier.
She brought it home and rolled it up and put it under her bed. because she had no place to put it.
It remained there until the guest visited and they pulled it out together. The moment she saw it, the guest had a sense that it carried some real historical significance. At first glance, it might look like a quilt, but it was in fact an early American bed cover. The way the squares were positioned made it clear that it had been intended to drape over a bed, with the images oriented perfectly for display on the sides. Prominently stitched in one corner was the date 1830, which fit exactly with what an expert would hope to see on a piece like this. The background material was a simple homespun fabric, likely bought from a local dry goods store, and the woman who made it used it as a canvas to depict what was most likely her family's story. The bed cover almost certainly originated in New England, probably in Connecticut or Massachusetts. It was unusual, however, that such a beautifully crafted, graphically strong piece was unsigned. Around the outside were 20 squares with vivid floral motifs, while the center contained remarkable folk art images. An American eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch, a charming lion, a group of figures that probably represented family members, and several substantial brick houses symbolizing prosperity. When it came to value, the guest was nearly floored. Despite the textile market being somewhat softer due to economic conditions, the appraiser valued the bed cover at a strong retail price of,
I would say $22,000 to $25,000.
Laughing and barely able to contain her excitement, the guest admitted she was completely blown away. Her hopes had only been for half that amount.